Travis Campbell in Georgia. What are you doing? What's up? What's
We're
going
recording
on?
so late that both of us are looking at nighttime.
That's
And
right.
this might be a first.
Yeah, that's true. I'm in.
I
Where
don't
am
think
I?
I've ever shared a night with you, which doesn't sound good. Sounds weird.
At least we're still 3,000 miles apart.
It made sense in my head, but as it left my mouth, I was like, "What did I just say?"
You want to start this over, or are you okay?
I think I'll survive.
Okay, I'm in.
We were talking metaphysics before the show, and you were making a point. And I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what we're going to do right now, but I wanted to hear what you were about to say. You were talking about Krefft and Peterson, right?
Yeah. So I'm really enjoying listening to Peter Krefft. I'm not Catholic, but I just think he's an amazing intellect. And he was on Jordan Peterson's show, and I watched about half of that. And I just, those are two powerhouse guys going at it. There's not very many people that can add to or correct Jordan Peterson, but Peter Krefft was doing it.
What did he? Can you remember what Krefft corrected him on?
He was Jordan Peterson made a very analytical statement about Christianity, which sounded really good, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And then Peter Krefft said, yeah, but you're forgetting about the resurrection, and that's what kind of topped the whole argument off. And I thought, I'm glad I wasn't sitting in that chair with Jordan Peterson, because I would have let that sit. And
right,
Peter Krefft, that's the icing on the cake every time we talk about this stuff. Without the resurrection, God's not personal. Sin doesn't matter. My sin doesn't matter. I don't have a relationship with God. It means like 50 things, man. And I was just really humbled watching that podcast, and it's like 2 hours long. I haven't finished watching it yet, but for everybody out there, tune that thing in and listen to it like 3 times.
This book gets lost in apologetics books lists, but it's a book that I think every Christian should have, and it's Peter Krefft and Ronald Ticciali's Handbook on a Christian Apologetics. And it's a little dated. It was written in the 90s, and I don't think that they had a second edition or anything. But it is a very, very good primer on all things apologetical. And one of the great things, they have 26 arguments for God's existence.
Wow.
That they just now they don't elaborate on them. They don't do any of that, but it's a fun. And the first time I heard this argument, it was from that book. There is the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. Therefore, God exists.
I love it.
And they report that there was like 2-3 atheists. That they personally knew 3 atheists who were convinced by that argument. And those guys, 2 of them became monks and 1 became a priest. But yeah,
wow.
they how do you understand beauty if God doesn't exist?
Yeah.
And I don't know him. Gavin Ortland, but I think I said last time we talked, I was in the middle of his book while I finished it.
Yeah.
Why God makes sense in a world that doesn't. I think that's a fantastic little book. And he has a chapter on the argument from beauty there. So he elaborates on just that little insight that there's the music of Johann Sebastian Bach and therefore God exists.
There's a lot of little pieces that really don't make sense if you're an evolutionist. And I think the appreciation of beauty is one of them. It takes a lot of genetic material, and it takes a lot of energy. And if it really is survival of the fittest, and everything has been whittled down by evolution, and there's nothing extra left because we're really just trying to survive. Here's this whole program that's in us that's appreciating beauty that really is a drag. It would shorten our lifespan and our survivability. from an evolutionary standpoint, it seems to me, the guy goes, you go out in the middle of the night and you look at the stars and wow, isn't that beautiful? And you're staring up at it. And, the saber-toothed tiger jumps out and eats you.
Sure.
Wouldn't evolution whittle that out? And yet
that's a good point. Yeah.
You can argue that that's what drives us is our desire for purpose and hope and destiny and beauty, and that's what makes us human. And from an evolutionary standpoint, that makes no sense at all. It's much better explained from a theistic point of view.
Yeah, that I would be attracted to another, to mate with that other, to produce offspring. That makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. But why would I appreciate the beauty of that other?
Yes. Yeah, why don't I just rape her and take her?
In fact, wouldn't the recognition of beauty in a sense prohibit reproduction for more reasons than you've already said? The tiger eating me, but I may become too selective in a mate and therefore not pass on my genetic material, which is what life is all about if Richard Dawkins is correct.
Right.
It's all about spreading DNA. So I don't. Yeah, beauty is a tough one in an atheistic system. It becomes purely subjective if atheism is true. But why is it that we all kind of recognize? Marilyn Monroe was not a dog. She was a beautiful woman
or a man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she wasn't a man, but she was a beautiful woman. I can look at Brad Pitt and say that's a very handsome guy. So we can and most people recognize who is and who isn't beautiful. I don't see the selective advantage of that.
Right.
Especially since it could be more efficiently accomplished through pheromones or something like that, where you could maybe sense that somebody is virile and will produce strong offspring instead of recognizing that they're beautiful.
Right. Because all that could work without beauty, without any appreciation of beauty. Think about your dog or your cat. They don't sit and look at the sunset and thank God for the beauty of things. They mate because of pheromones and smell and instinct and physical aggression and power, but they don't woo the other because they think they're beautiful and desire them in a human sense. That's part of the image of God that we have, I think. It just makes way more sense from a theistic, specifically Christian viewpoint.
What is that joke that Hugh Ross likes to do where he'll do a talk where he was sitting in an astronomy class, an astrophysics class. It was like one of the first ones he ever sat in I think it was his graduate degree. He was getting his PhD in astronomy, and his professor said, what's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? And people started going down the line of Mount Everest and the sunset I saw when I proposed to my wife. And the professor was knocking him down. He was like, no, that's not the most beautiful thing. No. He goes, here's the most beautiful thing. And he put it looks simple, but we all know it's elaborate. It's a physics formula.
Yeah, a math formula.
Formula on that, because that's the most beautiful thing. And it is weird that we have a universe where symmetry, efficiency, and when it comes down to biology, strength and beauty correlate so well. When you don't really have to have that to have a functional universe, you don't need a beautiful body for it to be efficient. But it is interesting how beautiful bodies so often are. So it's just a weird thing about the universe that the most beautiful formulas are the simplest and the most profound.
And you know, Travis, I think everybody experiences this. When you experience something beautiful, a fantastic song that moves you, you know, you hear a song that meant something to you when you were like in your 30s, and all the memories come rushing back. Maybe you saw the band live, or you know, you were with a particular person when you heard that music, or this fantastic sunset. You know, you go to Yosemite and you actually see Half Dome, and it's just magnificent. Or you read a book and you're just blown away, and there's this sense that everybody gets, this of transcendence, like there's more to this than I can put my finger on. But because we live in this, you know, this world that tells us that that's just an illusion, we don't pay any attention to it. It's just, you know, a feeling. But I want to propose that we don't live in just a materialistic universe, that is a real thing. We really are making a connection with the transcendent, with the supernatural. I believe it is God calling each one of us and saying, there's more to this world than what you see. And the evidence is all over the place. And that's one of the most amazing pieces that we all experience, maybe, you know, many times a day.
When you were talking, the thought occurred to me, you know, we lost Sinead O'Connor last week.
Yeah.
And we still don't know how she died. Some people suspect suicide because her son committed suicide not too long ago.
Yeah.
There was a lot about her life that was really topsy-turvy. But, you know, I do a little radio show myself. So in commemoration of her, I played Nothing Compares to You. I don't know her catalog that well, but I mean, that's an amazing song. And it was actually originally performed by Prince. You know, Prince wrote it.
Right.
And then she did she covered it. And her version is better known than Prince's. A lot of people were surprised to know that Prince covered it. My point is that, I mean, she's a beautiful woman. And she's very vulnerable in the video. I rewatched the video, and I was very much moved by it, especially when she delivers the line. I went to the doctor, and this is what he told me. Guess what he told me? He said, "Girl, you got to have some fun no matter what you do. But he's a fool because nothing compares to you." She's so heartbroken over the loss of her love, that has left her. That she thinks the idea that I would go out and have fun is horrible. And she's looking in the camera the entire time, and you're blown away by this. And I'm so sad about the way her life ended, 56 and all of that. But she was vilified for a lot of the things she did. And I think, though, years to come, it'll be that video that she's known for. And it kind of illustrates how a moment in time was captured where she was gorgeous in those years, her bald head notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Making herself vulnerable. And that really does transcend so much of the muck that made up her life. That she was able to touch at least one point in her life, something like transcendence. I'm getting cheesy here, but I don't know. I want to be remembered, and you know, no matter what I've gone through in my life, and I want to remember others at their best. And I think that was her at her best, delivering those notes, the sincerity, the vulnerability of her soul in the delivery of the song. That's what I want to remember her as.
Travis, when you experience something like that, I remember hearing a Creedence Clearwater song, you know, a couple of months ago in freaking Home Depot, right? Yeah. And I just stood there and listened to it because I remembered it. And it's like the whole universe is yours. It's right there in front of you. You can't imagine that anything could be better than that moment right there. And God and all the angels and every beautiful thing is happening at that moment. And to say that that's just the result of, physics in a materialistic universe, I think it's crazy. I think.
Do you know any musicians that are pure materialists?
That's a great question. No, no.
I mean, it's not like I've shaken hands with every musician on the planet, but every musician that I've ever talked to or listened to or read interviews of, when they've addressed that topic, they're like, there's no way that there isn't a spiritual realm. And most of these people that I'm thinking of weren't Christians, were not religious people as such, but my gosh, they were like, you got to be kidding me. Eddie Van Halen, who is one of my all-time favorite musicians, which, by the way, his son Wolfgang is coming out with a new album in just a few days. It's going to be released. Take a Bow. If you need to get on YouTube when this is over and show this. It's a 7-minute song, and he's playing one of his dad's guitars. It's ridiculously good.
Wow.
Ridiculously good. And you're getting goosebumps listening to it. And you're just because he's channeling his dad. There's no way that that's all just matter and motion.
No.
And my physical brain just happens to appreciate the aesthetics of the sound in the same way, or at least ballparking the way Wolfgang Van Halen appreciates it.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously appreciates it far better than I am. I'm a lowly DJ who has a few fans, and my definition of a DJ is just somebody who's jealous of musicians who can't play music. That's all I am. But he appreciates it more. But I can ballpark that, and I can enter into his world and just hear the message he's giving me, the song, the lyrics, and the music is just powerful. And that's true of so many of these great songs that you and I probably, if you and I had a catalog, I'm sure we'd be hitting many of the same songs that are just the greatest songs that have ever been written in the modern era.
Yeah.
But I mean, go back. I mean, Bach, Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. Is there anything more beautiful than that? I mean, it's ridiculous.
I want to challenge everybody, our listeners, that, when you experience something like that, that's that emotional, turn it into a worship experience, because this is God. This is like a tiny, 1/1000th of 1% experience of what the afterlife is going to be like with God. And to me, that's why we get these little tastes of this, the beauty that it's not even a good word for it, this overwhelming sense and experience that the whole universe is opened up in front of us, that we get the privilege of having, once in a while. And I think it's just, people say they don't hear from God. Well, oh my goodness, he's beating you on the head. He's saying, you think this is great. Just wait. And,
that's why music is such an important part of biblical worship. We're commanded in the Bible to
I was
raised and play instruments, and it has to be a part of it.
I was raised in a Christian, world where really all we ever spent time thinking about was the truth of the Bible and the truth of God's existence, and apologetics, and all of that stuff is fantastic, and I've got so much out of it. But look at this traditional Trinity in Christian experience: truth, beauty, goodness. That pretty much encompasses the whole world, all of human experience. Those three things together are really what God is about. And
right. Well, those are the classical, what we call the transcendentals.
Yes.
There's being, there's goodness, truth, beauty. Those are the main transcendentals. These are sort of like the properties of being itself. So truth is being in thought, and beauty is also a rational apprehension, but there's something else to beauty that goes beyond reason. And then goodness is beauty connected being connected to the will, when the will and what is desirable for its own sake connect. And so you're hitting the intellect, the emotion, and the will in those transcendentals. And so he who is being as such must be the primary exemplar of those transcendentals, which is one of the other many reasons to think that God exists.
And here's the challenge to the materialist is, if we lived in a materialistic universe that was just completely explainable with, physics, wouldn't I could see possibly how truth would be a big deal. We'd be thinking a lot about math formulas and physics and all of that stuff. But the beauty and goodness part, it doesn't make any sense that those exist in that universe. The beauty and goodness part are what speak of a personal universe, a universe, governed by and created by a person, not a set of physical laws operating on material.
I'm going to give you pushback, though. I think I wonder if truth works as well. I mean, Plantinga has this great evolutionary argument against naturalism, where the question is, would we evolve cognitive faculties that recognize truth if naturalism is true?
Right. We would not. Yeah.
As Paula Churchland, I think I've said this before, she said that the purpose, she's an atheist, she said that the purpose of life is basically the 4 F's: feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproducing.
Yeah.
And that's, so truth, as she says, takes the hindmost. I just don't think that in an atheistic universe, truth is necessary for survival. All you need is a kind of coherency. So if I perceive the lion, even if I perceive that the lion was a little pussycat, as long as I learned through experience that this thing could kill you, it wouldn't matter if my perception of the object was wrong. Or if I evolved a reaction to lions that is not really consistent with my thinking, that wouldn't prohibit my survival at all.
Yeah.
So the hurdles really are truth. And then if you can get over that hurdle, now you have goodness. And then if you can get over that hurdle, now you have beauty. Those are 3 really big hurdles if you want to be an atheist.
Before we started recording, we were talking about some of this, and somebody listening right now may say, that's great, that's your opinion. What's your evidence? And I think, the evidence from near-death experiences, we've talked about that before, where, there's tens of thousands of them now. There's a peer-reviewed journal now for near-death experiences where people leave the operating table and they see something or experience something, which is veridical, which is in line with the real world, and they come back and tell the story, which means they weren't just dreaming something or neurons firing before they died. They went up to the roof of the hospital and saw the red tennis shoe and came back and told the story.
It's my favorite one, by the way.
Yeah, and the nurse goes up there and there it is, and it's like, okay, so think about what that means. That's really astounding. It means they were conscious during that experience, right? So part of our consciousness, I would say the great part of our consciousness is
our consciousness itself can't be a material thing.
Can't be. And then they observed it. Well, with what apparatus did they observe it if their eyeballs and the optic nerve in their brain were still on the operating table, which means part of our ability to observe is not material. And then maybe most astoundingly is they remembered it. Well, where was that memory stored between the time they experienced it and the time they went back into their body? It means that part of our memory is not material. I can't imagine any other way to interpret that data other than that there is an immaterial, supernatural side to our existence and therefore all existence. How else could you explain it? You would, I think, if you were a materialist, you would have to simply say that's all BS. It's made up.
Right. I mean, look, I heard a philosopher not too long ago say this. It really struck me, and I've heard it put in this way. I've heard it put several in many different ways, but this one was the best way. He said, "Look, if I give you my jacket, I've deprived myself as a source of warmth. I've deprived myself of a source of warmth. But if I give you an idea, I've lost nothing in the exchange." And so ideas are immaterial things, and they have to therefore be housed in something immaterial.
Yeah.
And how can the same law of logic that exists in your mind right now be the same law as the one existing in my mind if it is not an immaterial thing? And if you say, well, it's two different laws, then how are we communicating?
Right.
How are we understanding each other? It seems like continuity between logical laws is an absolute precondition for knowing and communicating. And it's amazing to think that we're doing this 3,000 miles away from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. How many different ways is the information encoded? It's in my brain. It goes through the nerves in my head. It comes out verbally. It goes into the microphone in the computer. Then it comes out your speaker. It's sound waves there. It goes into your ears. It's converted to more nerve signals, and then it goes into your brain. So that's like what, 6 different modes that data took, and yet I speak and you understand, hopefully, and vice versa. It's astounding.
Right. Yeah. And our DNA has information.
Right.
Is that possibly material? I mean, obviously look at it, it's right there, but clearly if it's information, there's something immaterial even about our own bodies. And I think that would be a modern vindication of someone like Aquinas, who saw us as a matter form composite. Your form being your essence and your matter being the stuff out of which you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that congeals very well together. So the more we learn, the more these old ideas are confirmed.
A materialist will say, okay, there's 2 pieces here. If something is scientific, it has to be things like, there has to be evidence for it. It has to be repeatable. It has to be falsifiable. Fair enough. But then they add this second piece that says, and it has to adhere to physical law. It can't have a supernatural component to it. But think about what that means. The first part makes lots of sense. The second part is simply them saying, well, I'm defining science as there's no supernatural part to it. It's they're putting the cart before the horse. They're saying that's how we define science. Well, I would like to say, what if the world really is supernatural? What if there really are these parts to it that we can't explain materially? Then you're not doing science. You're going in with a bias, with a presupposition. And if you are right, and we live in a materialistic universe, all this crazy supernatural stuff will get whittled away, and by the first part, which has to do with evidence and repeatability. So why are you so afraid of this supernatural part? If you're right, it'll just go away. Like any other bad theory, it'll just be explained away. So
yeah, I think in modern science, to the satisfaction of many, and we had Gavin Kerr on talking about this, but modern science got rid of formal and final causes. And they were stuck with just the matter in motion efficiently causing events. And that's just pretty much what science is, the study of matter and efficient causality. And the problem is you still can't account for the fact that some chunks of matter have capacities that other chunks of matter don't.
Yes.
Like a rock has the capacity to get wet, but not necessarily hold water. Whereas a bigger hole in the ground does have the capacity to hold water, and we call that a pond. So I'm just taking just a real simple example and showing that speaks essence, that speaks nature. That what is true of that is not true of that. And then you expand this out. The only reason I know the difference between a bird and a person is because they have different natures. They have different forms, which goes beyond just the shape of the thing. It goes, I mean, if I push you off a cliff, you're going to fall down and go boom.
Yep. Well,
Look, it's time to go.
It is. Yep. All right, buddy.
All right. Hey, love you, man.
Love you. Thanks, Travis.